Welcome to the 2022 Virginia Festival of the Book, presenting Rust Belt Vegan Kitchen with Meredith Pangrace. I'm Sarah Lawson, Associate Director of the Virginia Center for the Book, a program of Virginia Humanities. Thanks for joining us. A couple notes before we begin. Please share your questions for the author using the Q&A tab on Zoom. This event also has optional closed captioning, which you can turn on and customize at any time with the tab at the bottom of your window. If you haven't already read today's book, we hope you will. For details about how to buy it from a local bookseller, please visit vabook.org, where you can also explore our full schedule of upcoming programs and watch past events. While you're there, please consider making a donation to support the festival's ongoing work at vabook.org/give. Thanks to our bookseller for this event, Fountain Bookstore in Richmond, Virginia. Now, I'm pleased to introduce our speakers. Meredith Pangrace, editor of Rust Belt Vegan Kitchen, is a home cook and book designer from Cleveland, Ohio. And our moderator, Erin O'Hare, is a reporter for Charlottesville Tomorrow who reports on neighborhoods and communities with a particular focus on housing. Thank you both for joining us today. Take it away.
Thank you for the introduction, Sarah. I'm really excited to be here with you, Meredith, talking about the Rust Belt Vegan Kitchen because I don't know much about the Rust Belt and I'm not a vegan. So I'm expecting to learn a whole lot. And I hope that, everyone in attendance will as well. So Meredith, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the Rust Belt?
Sure, yeah. I'm a born and raised Clevelander. I've been here all my life. My great-grandparents came from Czechoslovakia and were immigrants. So my parents were, they were, first generation. And I have lived some other places and traveled to a lot of places, but I love Cleveland and I love the Rust Belt. So I'm very pro Rust Belt. I'm here to stay. So yeah, what is the Rust Belt? The Rust Belt is the cities that were kind of like built and thrived during the steel industry, right? So that's going to include cities like Cleveland, Chicago, Pittsburgh, Detroit. These cities have struggled. It is a thing when the steel industry, changed and jobs were lost. These, we had a lot of rusty buildings and abandoned factories, and it kind of had this negative connotation for a while. Air pollution. I'm sure, everybody knows the joke about Cleveland's river catching on fire, like all these things. But these cities have really experienced a rebirth in the last couple decades. And so using the term Rust Belt for us is a term of pride, really. We're proud that our families, chose to live here and raised us here. And there's a certain kind of thing about Rust Belt people. There's like an authenticity, a down to earthness, kind of a hardworking, attitude and stuff that kind of ties us all together. So there are physical boundaries. I don't remember exactly. If you go into Pennsylvania, and the Belt Publishing defines the boundaries of the Rust Belt a little more. We'll go like as far as Pittsburgh, but not east of Philadelphia, right? So we go to Cincinnati. So there are actual physical, but if you just think of it as those steel cities, kind of, yeah.
So how did all of that come to bear on food traditions? Like, are there things that are unique about Rust Belt kitchens in general, not just vegan kitchens?
I think because, these cities the immigrants came here for the jobs at those factories and at those steel mills. So a lot of them were from Eastern Europe. My personal, background, Eastern European for me, pierogies, stuffed cabbage, sauerkraut, paprikash, these are kind of things that when I've met people from California or from Virginia, they're not as familiar. They're not getting these foods, where for us, it's like we have them everywhere in our favorite restaurants. Everybody has their pierogies and stuff. And so for me, that's kind of what I was thinking of the Rust Belt. But, this book is a community book. So it's not just my experience in Cleveland. There it is. Yeah. It's also, I reached out to other people in Cleveland, but also Detroit, Chicago. And I just found, wow, like this is awesome. We're really diverse. So it's not an Eastern European vegan kitchen. It's Rust Belt, which includes, we have soul food recipes, we have Indian recipes, we have Irish recipes. We kind of have it all. We're this real melting pot of cultures.
And one one thing that I love about the cookbook, for anybody who hasn't read it yet, or who hasn't grabbed a copy yet, Meredith includes all of these really wonderful stories from individual people who've contributed these recipes. So, fenugreek pancakes is from one person, and then we've got, zucchini muffins from someone else. And I love that each dish has a story that goes along with it, because food, and we know this in Virginia too. I mean, we know this everywhere, right? That like food and stories really go hand in hand. It's about friendship and family and culture and tradition. And so I love it when cookbooks have the story with the dish, because I know that when I cook, I'm like, oh, this is Marie's butternut squash recipe, or like, that those things make the experience of preparing and eating food really meaningful. So yeah. How did you get connected with all of these folks?
So that was part of the fun. This whole book kind of came into itself during the pandemic. As a staffer for Belt Publishing, we were looking to do projects that were, in-house, which meant ones that could be led by the staff members. And so I, had been doing I've always loved cooking, been a home cook. With the pandemic being home, having more free time, I was doing all kinds of experimenting, using my kitchen as kind of a lab for all these different kind of things that I wanted to try. And so specifically for some of the traditional dishes that my family would eat, because I was missing my family, I was missing a gathering. And so that was kind of like a way that I could connect, was to make these foods. Even though I would end up eating it all myself, it still was very comforting. So it was just kind of a fun thing. And then I posted my own, I made a New Year's Day dinner where I did pierogies and paprikash and cabbage and noodles and, our traditional kind of Slovak food. And it was in I think a vegetarian Cleveland, maybe Facebook group or something, or one of them that I'm a member of. And I got a lot of responses. People were very curious, like, oh, I've been craving that since I, stopped eating meat. And then people also started responding of things that they were making, all kinds of different things that I've never tried. And so I was like, okay, there's definitely something here. So that's why it's not, I feel like I don't have the qualifications to write a cookbook. I'm a book designer. I make the books. But that particular knowledge, I didn't think I could really handle all myself. So the idea of community, where I'd be reaching out to these people, also to show the diversity in their stories, and not just where they're from and the kind of foods that they love, but also why they choose to do the vegan part, right? Because we could have, we could have done Rust Belt Kitchen. I think that's a possibility. I hope that we do that book at some point. But for me personally, it kind of was narrowed down a little bit. And I like the idea of this being like this oxymoron. What does that mean? And so when I started reaching out on social media, got a lot of great responses. I joined a lot of other cities groups to find my home chef. So, Chicago living vegans, Detroit vegans, these other groups where there's like a lot of community and support. And then I wanted to give a nod out also to all the restaurateurs that are managing to have vegan restaurants in these cities. I think, if you were someone that was interested in starting a vegan restaurant, you might not choose, Pittsburgh. You might be like, okay, I need to go to like LA or Brooklyn or something. So I wanted to give a shout out to those people. So there's a fantastic website called Happy Cow that lists, vegetarian and vegan restaurants in every city. And so I just started blasting out the emails and saying, hey, do you guys want to be part of this? It's really about community building and sharing. And so then I had this nice balance of people submitting. And like I said, that was definitely like so fun, just getting the emails from the people that were excited to be part of it.
Yeah, I love all the different layers of community in this too. It's like in the recipes and the book itself and the stories. And I love that so much. I'm like, ooh, we need to get something like this for Charlottesville going, because it's such a cool idea. And again, like food is such a unifying community thing for people. And it's interesting that it came up during the pandemic too, where we were all, or many of us, I know I was exploring cooking for myself and, figuring out more of that. I love sharing meals with people.
Yeah. Yeah. And
It's really, I was like, how do I?
Yeah, I think
Yeah, right.
Hosting dinner party, or not even, dinner parties actually sounds really fancy. That doesn't sound very Rust Belt at all, but we'll just be sharing meals or having people over for a cookout or a weenie roast. Is a big part of like how we fulfilled our social needs. And yeah, not having that for so long, I think, that was a big emotional part of it, is that I was filling that need through these social media messages, through my Instagram and these emails with the contributors. For sure.
Yeah. And did you make any bread? I know a lot of people were making bread.
I made a lot of seitan. Like that was the thing. And seitan is almost, do you want me to explain what it is for people that don't know? So seitan is basically a meat substitute that is made of vital wheat gluten, which is basically flour, but it's washed flour. And so it's really just like the glutinous part of flour that has all the protein. If you are gluten-free, this is not the product for you, obviously, but if you can tolerate gluten, it's an excellent source of protein and has a great texture. And so, do I have it here? It just looks like flour. It looks like a flour that is maybe like a little more yellow, and you mix it with, you can grind chickpeas and mix it with tofu, or you don't even have to mix it with anything. Or you just mix it with water and it becomes almost like a dough bread, like a real sticky dough bread that you knead. And then you can form it into like a big log and bake it like a piece of baked chicken. You can peel it off into little chunks and then boil or steam or bake those. So you have kind of nuggets that you can like bread or fry or, turn into jerky, or gosh, you can do so many things with it. It's kind of crazy. You can make sausages, you can roll it. If you're thinking of bread dough, you can do a million things with bread dough. You can shape it into all these different things. You can roll it into like hot dog kind of things, wrap it in foil to make your own sausages. So I think seitan was really my bread because it had that same thing of the kneading, but then I was kind of, doing the cookbook thing. So
yeah, that's cool. I feel like I should have eaten lunch before this because now I'm getting really hungry. Well, we've been talking about ingredients already, and Meredith, you were going to share some of the ingredients with us.
Yeah. So in the book, again, this is a very approachable book. The language is folksy. It's not preachy. It's not high level cooking skills. I wanted it to really be accessible to everyone. But also I realized there are things that I might know about or other vegans or vegetarians might know about that someone that was a meat eater not. So I did include a little forward part, about the pantry staples. Some are ones that you might already have. Some are kind of weird. So the first, and what a lot of them are for making up for the meat, the dairy, and the eggs, right? So when people think about going more plant-based, they're like, oh, how do I not have dairy, meat, and eggs? Like, this is so hard. And I get it. It is hard, but there are some, you kind of learn about a couple things and you start to miss it less and less until these things become your normal. So let's talk about eggs, right? Eggs for baking, eggs for all kinds of things. In baking, eggs is pretty easy. One ingredient that I have, and I buy it in bulk, and I use it a ton, and it's cheap. I get it at Aldi's. Do you guys have Aldi's in Virginia? I'm a huge Aldi's fan.
We just got one in Charlottesville.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there's also, is it Lidl or what is
Lidl?
It? Lidl.
Yeah. We also just got one of those.
Okay, I think, because I have a good friend in Richmond, Virginia, and she says Lidl. But you can get it ground flaxseed, right? So it's just kind of like this little powder thing, right? It's super healthy. It has tons of like omega something or others. And you take a tablespoon of it with a couple tablespoons of warm water, and it kind of sits and gets this like gelatinous kind of property, not unlike an egg that you're whisking up. And this is great in baking. It works as a binder in baking. Also, if you're just trying to like bulk up the protein, if you're making a veggie burger, that kind of thing. But flaxseed is awesome.
What is the taste like? Like, does it alter the taste of a baked good?
Flaxseed does have a little bit of a nutty texture. Yeah, so I think that's why probably like we have I think it's used in our zucchini muffins and our pumpkin cake. Like it's definitely kind of, if nutty flavor isn't really what you want in your dish, you're probably not going to go that way. Egg replacer, Bob's Red Mill. So I'm just a huge fan of Bob's Red Mill. This brand is pretty, you really don't have to go to health food stores. Usually grocery stores have like the little section of the Bob's Red Mill, but they make an egg replacer that is kind of similar. It's more like a flour, and this is not going to have flavor. So if you didn't want that nutty taste, it's going to work the same way. You're just going to mix it with water, let it sit, and it gets gelatinous. But what about scrambled eggs? What about breakfast? You know, a lot of times people will say that, or vegans will say breakfast is the hardest dish to get a satisfying meal because it's so bacon and eggs heavy. We have a fantastic recipe in the book for a tofu scramble. Tofu has been around forever. Maybe not in the cuisine that you're used to. It can have a lot of negative associations with it, that it is flavorless and it's boring and it's weird. It doesn't have a lot of flavor, but that's okay because you can flavor it. So again, let me show you this. Again, tofu at Aldi's. I think it's like $1.75, not expensive. Comes in silken, which is more if you want to use it to make like a creamy ranch dressing or something that you would use a yogurt for. Or if you want something with a little more texture, you're going to want to look for the firm or extra firm and drain it. I do have a section in my book also about machinery where I talk about some kitchen gadgets. Again, not necessary, but things that are a little bit helpful. This is called a tofu press. So pressing tofu, you just like unpackage it, put that little block in there, squeeze it. It's going to drain a lot of the water out. That's going to just give it a better kind of chewy texture. A lot of people will freeze tofu and then cook it. That's going to help with the texture to give it a little more meatiness. But you know, even if just pressed with kitchen towels and between, you know, 2 plates with a little can of soup on top or something, as long as you get some weight on there, that water is going to drain off. Easy way to press your tofu. Crumble it up. You're going to saute it with some onions and some peppers, whatever you would put, you know, like in a hash or something, some smoked paprika, some hot sauce, and then your secret ingredients for that to get that egginess is a pantry staple called black salt. Do I have them?
Yeah, I was fascinated by that one.
Salt. Oh, here it is. Yeah. So again, this one might be a little harder to find. You might have to look at an international food store.
Which we do have here.
Perfect. Okay. And so the name is actually Kala Namak. You can see this. And it has a pinkish kind of color to it. And it smells sulfurous. It smells like eggy, right? But it's also very salty. So while, you know, that smell might not be appealing to you, it is the smell of eggs. So when you sprinkle some of that into your tofu scramble, you're going to get a little more of an eggy flavor. The other secret ingredient is a little turmeric, because it has that beautiful golden color. So then your mind, you know, you're not looking at kind of this like a whitish product. It's looking that beautiful yellow that you're going to expect in eggs. So those are like great ways to do eggs. And then I'll just talk about milks real quick. I think, you know, everybody's pretty much seeing non-dairy milks everywhere. It used to be pretty hard to find, but even, you know, I have a Save-A-Lot on my corner and they've got soy, almond, and coconut, I think, and it's a tiny little city grocery store. But if you can't find it, nuts are pretty simply made out of nuts, or nut milks are made of nuts and water. So if we have time, I could do a little demo of that, but that's not too hard to do. You can vary the amount of water to get the creaminess and thickness you want. If you want more like a skim milk or like a coffee creamer, you have control over that. You can control the sweetness, the flavor, those kinds of things. And then for meats, there's a whole bunch of, you know, ways to go on this. And I include a page in my book where I kind of talk about the different camps, like these 2 camps of substituting meat and why. There are people that don't eat meat that don't want anything to do with anything that looks like meat. You can just use vegetables, right? So we have a beautiful recipe for a burger that is eggplant. and it's ground eggplant. It has some quinoa in it. Actually, no, lentils. It's lentils and eggplant. It's ground up. There's no, you're not really trying to be neat in that. There's no kidding anyone.
Yes.
Veggie burger. But then we also have some recipes where, like our Cleveland Polish boy, which again, you'll learn some things that are, different cultures, but then also the book includes a lot of city specific things. Cleveland Polish boy is one of them, which is a traditional sausage sandwich. And our professional chef that gave us that recipe, she gave us a fantastic from scratch barbecue sauce, a fantastic from scratch coleslaw, but she just says, you know what, go and find your favorite sausage at the grocery store. That's a veggie sausage. There's a lot of those that you can already buy. So our book includes kind of both, whether some will say, get the frozen, meatballs from Whole Foods that are plant-based or whatever. And then some are like, you don't need that, just use this. So.
Yeah. And I was really intrigued by that recipe as well, because I was like, oh, well, I have like all of these things in my kitchen already. So it wasn't like looking at that, I was like, oh, well, that wouldn't be a stretch to make because I actually already have all of these things except the veggie sausage. But I was like, maybe this isn't as hard as I thought to make vegan dishes.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
Which was a definite, like an aha moment for me, I guess. It was like, look at that. I always thought like I really needed, cheese, eggs, which I love them.
Yeah.
But
that's totally fine. No judgment in this at all. In fact, I had friends help with all the recipe testing, which was the, second favorite part of the working on the book. First part was the community building. Second part was the recipe testing. And, I definitely had meat eaters that were part of that test group.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine was like, oh my gosh, this mushroom polenta, I loved it. My family loved it. And she's like, the second time I ate it with some turkey and it was really great too. And I was like, that's fine. So
yeah.
Like a meat eating family, there are still things for you in this book,
Yeah. And I thought too, another thing was a lot of these recipes almost seemed like a really good way to use up the produce in my fridge that will often kind of languish in there. I'll be like, I'll get, 3 red peppers and then I'll only need 2 for a shakshuka. And I'll be like, oh, what do I do with the third one? But there's so many things in here where I'm like, oh yeah, I got some frozen peas. I also have a can of chickpeas. I need to use up half a red onion that I use for something else, and that was another thing that really surprised me about the book was that when I think about cooking vegan, I think about all the like fancy things in the grocery store, but this cookbook really did seem like accessible. It's like, this is stuff that I have.
Yeah.
And I don't need to buy Daiya cheeses or whatever, but even though I could.
Yeah. But let's talk about cheese real quick, because cheese.
Let's do that.
And cheese is hard, like for people making that jump, they may be vegetarian and they're like, oh, but I can't give up cheese. It's like, you can do whatever you want to do, but it kind of, if you open your mind to things that are like cheese, but that are not cheese, maybe you could have a little less, right? So there are some really, again, if you have a grocery store that has these products, there are cool products that you can buy and they've come a long way. Like they used to be pretty crappy. Science, food technology, everything gets better. Like vegan cheese slices, they are not bad. They have like a pretty decent melting thing. If it's on a sandwich with some other things, it's going to add some salty, yummy flavor. You might not be eating it straight out of the package like you would with regular cheese, but they do the job. You can buy, the grated or like the faux Parmesan cheese. This is great. I use it all the time. However, in the book, we have this woman from Cincinnati that actually started a vegan cheese company called Mad Cheese. And in one of her recipes, she does her own kind of faux Parmesan topping that is so delicious, made with like ground roasted nuts and salt and yummy things. So when I make her recipe, I usually like quadruple the batch of the topping, and then I put it in a jar and I have my own and it's fresh. I know exactly what's in it. Cheaper, so delicious. So those are things I missed. Also mac and cheese, right? It's comfort food. I think no matter where you live, mac and cheese is comfort food. There are lots of different takes on how to do vegan mac and cheese. Some of them are going to say, go and buy some, fake, I hate calling it fake cheese, but a lot of people call it fake cheese. I'm going to say buy some plant-based cheese. However, we have a really awesome young chef here in Cleveland that kind of has been getting a little famous for his vegan mac and cheese, and he was generous enough to contribute that recipe. And I actually have some of it going, and it's surprisingly simple. The only ingredient that might be a little tricky, since we've been talking about ingredients, is I just buy it in bulk at the store, so I don't have a nice package of it, but it's nutritional yeast. So what that, it sounds weird, right? It's a natural kind of product. Here it's in the jar. It kind of looks like fish food. That's always what I think it looks like. It's kind of this golden. If you smell it, it smells like a Parmesan, and it adds this like delicious kind of cheesy flavor to things. So what I have going over here is just boiling some water and some coconut milk. I have some of those like leftover veggies. Again, I didn't have to go to the store to buy anything to show you today. I had some leftover potatoes and onions from some vegan corned beef and stew that I made yesterday. I had some bell pepper, some garlic, a little sweet potato, just kind of rough chop those. And I'm just going to simmer these in the water in the coconut milk for about 20 minutes. Another fantastic ingredient that goes in here that's super versatile that we use a lot in the book are raw cashews. Oops. So raw cashews, again, don't get the roasted ones, don't get the salted ones. They're a little bit pricey, but a little goes a long way. Using these in a sauce where they're cooking and they're getting nice and soaked and then blended is going to give like such a beautiful, rich, fatty, creamy kind of flavor to things. So the cashews are definitely a big part of this mac and cheese sauce. I love this mac and cheese sauce because it's all these like whole foods, right? There's nothing too crazy in here. But there's also a beautiful green bean salad where, again, I think this is, yeah, Heather's from the Mad Cheese, where she takes the cashews and blends them with water and then some sweeteners to get like a beautiful kind of like sour cream dressing to go on that green bean salad. It's fantastic. So yeah, so that's a great thing. I'm gonna put the other things that are going in here are just some lemon juice and then some hot sauce. Let's see what else is in. Again, the turmeric for that beautiful golden color, some salt, some pepper, and then also some smoked paprika. So I think like things that are smoked, like smoked paprika, liquid smoke, smoked salt, those also kind of give that richness that might come from bacon. So again, it's not bacon, but it's going to kind of lend some of those flavors that you might be missing or think that you can't get without adding those ingredients. So we're going to let all that stuff go for a while. Again, I apologize, I don't have an overhead camera. I'm going to turn this heat up a little bit. And that's all going to simmer for about 20 minutes. In there, the vegetables are going to get soft, the nuts are going to get soft. At the end, I'm going to go ahead and add the nutritional yeast. It's going to thicken it up. And then I'm going to put the whole situation into high-speed blender. Okay, so the Vitamix. A lot of people think that the Vitamix is overkill, right? They're like, why would I need this expensive blender? You probably don't. There are other ones. I know Ninja makes one that's, Vitamix are kind of expensive, right? Since the Vitamix, they kind of were the first. They set up the stage for high-speed blenders. There's a lot of other ways to go. But the cool thing about the Vitamix is that it was founded in Cleveland, Ohio. So it's been around. This is like, for me, the perfect, except like, why? And this is like probably my third canister. Like I keep using them. And it's just such a great like Rust Belt story to me of like combining that kind of like hardworking family company. I mean, they're made here. I have friends that have worked for Vitamix, so I just love the company, and it's a great story. And the CEO, who is now the granddaughter of the founder, is this woman, Jody Berg, and they have some recipes. That eggplant burger is from the Vitamix staff, and then they also have a beautiful curried soup. So once all that stuff gets going, it's basically going to be like a potato, carrot, onion, delicious soup. And I'm just going to put it into here, blend it up. But I think what probably is giving it that cheese, it's going to turn into this like gorgeous golden cheese sauce. I think probably what's going to make it not just like a pureed soup is the richness of those cashews, and then the fish food, the nutritional yeast is going to give it like that beautiful velvety texture.
Yeah.
All pureed like crazy in the Vitamix. So
how does this reheat? Like, I know that I will make like big batches of food and I'll freeze them or keep them in the fridge. And so how do these ingredients in these dishes, particularly mac and cheese, how do they do with the reheating?
That's a great question. And I kind of figured that out in the testing, because I made a huge batch of it and only ate so much in the first sitting because it's quite rich. So you basically make the sauce and just pour it over your pasta as cheesy as you want it. When I reheated the next day in the microwave, it definitely got dry, and I was like, so it actually worked better to reheat it on the stove and just add a little more plant-based milk. I think I had some like soy milk or almond milk, unsweetened, and then that really brought back the creaminess, and it was fantastic. I don't think I ever needed to freeze it, because I think I've always eaten it in then a couple days. But also with this particular sauce, it makes a lot. So depending how much pasta you make, you might only use a cup or two, but then I always pour it into like a little jar, and I use it for like nachos and as a cold dip with like celery and carrots. It's so good. But then if you warm it up with some salsa and some chips, yeah, it's really, really good.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah, and you know exactly what's in it. I think that's the thing too. Again, there are a lot of like plant-based dips and stuff that you can find. And a lot of them are great, and a lot of them have great ingredients, but it's kind of fun to then like customize it and know exactly what's in it.
Yeah, that feels really good. I know for me, when I'm cooking, I'm like, I know exactly what's in this. I did I put in the time. To me, it feels very much about like nurturing myself and whoever I'm cooking for, which is such a wonderful thing to be able to do. Yeah. Do any of our like participants have some, we do have a Q&A. I was like, does anyone have any questions about ingredients or anything? Rosabelle is asking, what's the difference between nutritional yeast and yeast used for baking? Excellent question.
That's a good question. And I can't say I know. I mean, they're completely two different things. This would not be used like for baking at all. And I'm not sure exactly, so I would have to look that up for you, but do not try to sub one for the other. That's for sure. Completely different product.
Sure. I mean, I know that I don't know, I always taste things.
I can probably see what I wrote in here. Oh yeah, I said it looks like fish food. That's my joke always.
I remember that.
But nickname, Newt. So nutritional yeast is dried deactivated yeast, if that means anything to anyone.
So that doesn't have the rising quality to it then. So you're not going to get like, I'm imagining a pot of this cheese sauce kind of bubbling over like a washing machine and I Love Lucy or something.
Right.
It becomes its own thing. So that would be kind of funny. We got another one. Randy says that he's also used Randy has also used cheese sauce for nachos and thinned it out with cashew milk and made broccoli cheddar soup out of it.
Oh, that sounds delicious.
Randy, thank you.
That sounds good.
I love broccoli cheddar soup.
That sounds fantastic.
Pretty much the only way you can get me to eat broccoli. I wish it were different, but it's the reality of things.
I have a couple more things that I wouldn't mind just talking about ingredient wise if we have time. Unless you have
Yeah, we got.
just another weird one. Just because again, there are things that are common and things that are not common. I do want to share this product. Again, I buy this in bulk, and these are called Butler Soy Curls. A lot of bulk stores have them. You can get them on Amazon. And what these are, it's textured vegetable protein. So I talked about Seitan before, which is vital wheat gluten. That is, I don't want to call it a dough, but it's kind of a dough that you cook and steam and do whatever to get that like meaty, chewy kind of texture. Soy is another option, textured dried soy. These look like, little cheese curls or something, right? They're very dry and powdery. The only ingredient on these is whole non-GMO soybeans. So again, nothing too crazy. They don't have a lot of flavor. That's your job. That's what things in the book help you do, right? So what you do with these little guys is you basically rehydrate them in boiling water. You can add a bouillon cube or broth or whatever, and they turn into like kind of, it's probably hard to show, but they look like these little like chicken, like they're stretchy. See how it doesn't snap anymore? It's like a little chewy texture thing. These, again, they don't have a lot of flavor, super, super versatile. When I was doing my New Year's Day dinner, paprikash, which is basically a delicious, smoky, sour cream is traditionally in it. Heavy on the paprikash, right? Hence the name of the spices. A lot of other spices going on. Such a delicious sauce. It usually is made with like a pulled chicken, like a stringy kind of chicken that gets very soft as it simmers all day. And so when I was working on that recipe, these soy curls were kind of like the natural choice for that chicken substitute. I also had mushrooms, and you could just do it with mushrooms. Mushrooms are always a fantastic meat replacement. But my family, who does eat meat, I kind of wanted to give them a little bit of a closer thing to the chicken. So I used that, which is amazing. Turned out great. You can also take these things and marinate them, maybe in like a teriyaki sauce or something, and you can throw them in the air fryer. I do talk about, air fryers. I did buy an air fryer during the pandemic. I was one of those people. I am so glad I did, because in vegan cooking, there's a ton of awesome things you can do with it. But you can marinate these, put them in the air fryer, and they almost make like a little jerky kind of thing that then you can have as like a little protein snack, a little savory snack. Throw it into like a stir fry, throw it into a, if you're going to do a vegan Alfredo sauce. They're really good, and they're not expensive, and they're just like a nice pantry staple to have around all the time. Big bags of them. So in talking about textured vegetable protein, it can also come in like kind of like granules like this. Looks kind of the same, just like ground up. This is great if you're doing like sloppy joes or chili or anything that you want kind of that ground meat kind of texture. But again, it's your job to season it. So you're gonna want to add things, for the umami. So soy sauce, tomato paste, salt. You gotta get that salt in. Meat's so salty, and anything maybe with the smokiness, the smoked liquid smoke or something like that. So
yeah, sounds really good. And we have another question about substitutions. Sue is asking which mushrooms as substitutes are the best to look for.
I think it kind of depends on what you're going for. I do like to have dried mushrooms around. I live solo and cook for one. So having fresh mushrooms, while I adore them, I kind of like sometimes can't eat them, and then they get slimy. So it's hard unless I'm like know that I'm going to cook the mushrooms right away. I really like having dried mushrooms around, because again, it's kind of like the soy curls, you can reconstitute it as you need it. And the beauty of that too is that when you do that, that water that you pour over them, you have like two awesome products now, because you have the wonderful mushrooms that you can throw into the dish, but then you also have that flavorful water that gets that like rich dark brown. So whatever kind, shiitakes, porcinis, like whatever you kind of can find, for in the dried. the dried mushrooms actually, and again, getting kind of back to the book about stories and food connections. There's a traditional Slovak soup that we would eat on Christmas Eve called juha, which just means soup, I guess. But for us, it meant this very specific soup of mushrooms and kielbasa, sausage. But what I remember from a little kid is that my grandmother would go to the market and buy like tons of mushrooms and fresh mushrooms. And with a needle and thread, she would string them and then hang them like in her guest room, like until they dried out. And it was like, what is this? Like, what is this tradition? And what is this? And I don't think I appreciated like how awesome that is. Like, I thought she was kind of crazy, but now it's definitely something that I'm like, oh, I should do that myself, you know, and like I can find bulk mushrooms for cheap. So yeah, I didn't include anything like that, but there are, you know, I am a big fan of the dried mushrooms, I think, because I have that connection. And what that did for the soup, it just like concentrated that flavor so much. For, you know, if I'm going to eat like a whole mushroom for like a burger on the grill, of course you got to go with a portobello. I mean, that kind of, you know, restaurants started doing portobello burgers way before Impossible Burgers or Beyond Burgers. And it's kind of a bummer because those still are my favorite, like a nice big juicy grilled portobello. At home, I'm usually just buying, you know, the button mushrooms. And again, keeping things on a budget. If there, you know, are some kind of beautiful mushrooms at the farmer's market and I'm splurging. But again, I think you can keep things simple. One kind of fun mushroom though, that from the Asian grocery store that I've kind of been playing with are the king oyster mushrooms. Those are pretty big in the vegan community because, you know, they have the real thick stalk, and you can slice those and then sear them almost like a scallop. It's kind of fun. You can also, that huge big stalk, if you pull it apart, it's real stringy, almost like a chicken kind of stringy finger, like a thing. And so then there are recipes where you like deep fry those and you get kind of like a Nashville hot chicken recipe kind of thing. I've seen things like that on Instagram. So
that sounds cool.
Too successful. Like I did when I was doing some of the testing. I did kind of like a night of deep frying where, you know, I did the eggplant. We have a great kind of like fishless taco recipe where it is a deep fried, you know, kind of fillet of eggplant. And I actually preferred that and was much more successful with the frying of the eggplant than the oyster mushroom. So I have a little bit yet to learn with the oyster mushroom trick, but it's definitely a good trick if you can figure it out. It's interesting. Oh, I gotta add some water to my veggies over here that I can answer while you're.
Oh yeah, I was just thinking I have a dress on that's covered in mushrooms, and I was not expecting to talk about mushrooms today, but I feel like I dressed for the panel without even knowing it. Yeah,
Absolutely perfect. I love that. Oh my gosh.
Yep, there we go. The mushrooms. And mushrooms is something that I struggle with eating because it's a texture to me that I am not used to. Like my family doesn't eat a lot of fresh vegetables. We're very much like canned vegetables, except fresh potatoes. Like, you know, I've peeled thousands of pounds of potatoes in my childhood. But you know, mushrooms, that was something I didn't eat until I was a lot older. And
that's a common, people say it's a texture issue with mushrooms. You know, like, oh, they're slimy. I think an easy, good way to get around that. There's a stuffed cabbage recipe from a friend of mine in the book, not my own stuffed cabbage recipe, but stuffed cabbage. I talk about that in the intro of my book. There's a cabbage on the cover of the book. The cabbage, the humble cabbage, very meaningful vegetable to me. My favorite way to do a vegetarian filling for a stuffed cabbage is to chop up walnuts very fine and mushrooms very fine with onions and spices and cook that on the stove. So you're getting kind of this like nice, again, kind of mimicking ground meat, but you know, the walnuts give it the heft and then the mushrooms give it the flavor, but you can kind of get around that sliminess of the mushrooms if they're chopped real tiny and mixed with the other stuff. You know, you don't really feel like you're eating mushrooms. You just feel like you're eating this like delicious filling in the cabbage.
I'm going to have to challenge myself to make that recipe because cabbage is another thing that my family eats a lot of. or Irish Catholic people from New England. But I've really only, they only prepare it. And this is like not a diss, but it's boiled cabbage all the time. And I'm always kind of like, ugh. So I'm going to challenge myself to make this cabbage recipe because the way that you're describing it sounds so good. And I'm like, cabbage and mushrooms, two things I don't keep in my pantry or my fridge, but the way that you're describing it, I'm like, oh, this is delicious. So it sounds good. That's going to be my challenge. And also cabbages are so cute. Like for anyone who doesn't have the book, all the kitchen tips in the book are indicated by this really sweet little cabbage drawing.
Yeah. Another
So,
great recipe
I love that
for you in the just as a recommendation, the Slovenian sauerkraut soup is incredible. So sauerkraut is huge in, German, Slovenian, Polish, right? All our Eastern European places. Sauerkraut is a fantastic pantry staple. I don't think I listed it. The juice, even, again, Aldi's in a jar, sauerkraut. Although I don't know if they might have it in Virginia, like Aldi's. I don't know if they just put it,
we will
in the Cleveland market or something because they know we eat tons of it. But it's, the juice of it is a great way to add like a rich saltiness to things. But the soup, the Slovenian sauerkraut soup in this book is so simple. Again, it's like paprika, potatoes, you put a whole bunch of sauerkraut in it, and it's a great way to eat your cabbage because, in preserving fresh produce, living in these Rust Belt cities, like we don't have a lot of those fresh, in season things. So things that can store on the shelf, things like dried mushrooms and sauerkraut, like ways to preserve when we do have the harvest season. So
yeah.
Yes, but make friends with the cabbage. You can slice it and marinate it and put it on the grill, like cabbage steaks. So good. I just started eating those maybe about 2 or 3 years ago. I was like, oh, this is great.
I need to get a grill. That's also what I'm learning from this.
You can bake them in the oven too. You can roast them in the oven. Lots of ways. Boil it.
Yeah.
Don't boil it unless you're like making the cabbage rolls, right? Because then you kind of have to peel them off. Although there is a secret in the book of putting the whole cabbage, I had never heard this before, in the freezer the night before. It's frozen, and then you take it out, and the leaves are pliable so that you don't have to actually boil it one by one.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing. I personally kind of like, and I talk about that in my intro too, the very methodical, patient thing of kind of slowly steaming the cabbage and peeling it off leaf by leaf. But hey, you might have time for that, and that's fine.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we've got about 12 minutes left. How's the mac and cheese over there?
Check the veggies. They should be getting pretty soft by now.
Like, I wish we had smell-o-vision. That's one of the things that's been disappointing about the future for me. Like, I thought that when I was a kid, I was like, oh, we'll definitely have smell-o-vision by then. I wish I could smell what this was in your kitchen right now.
It looks like quite a bit of the water has boiled off, so I'm going to add a little water just because when you add that nutritional yeast, it's pretty thick. So I'm going to add a little more water to it. And we can also keep talking while I'm doing this.
Well, do any of our participants, any viewers, since we are coming towards the end, unfortunately, are there any other lingering questions out there that Meredith could answer while she's finishing up the mac and cheese? I'll let everybody type. I mean, I have a million questions, and I'm so hungry right now.
It does smell really good.
I ate some cashews beforehand, but I'm like, what am I gonna have for lunch now? / early dinner, I guess. I don't know. We got a question. Okay. Howie asks, is there a way to find these recipes online?
We didn't publish the book online. You can find, we've done some media. So a couple of our media outlets have listed some of the recipes. So if you visit the book website, my website is rustbeltvegankitchen.com. And if you go to the press page, there's some articles. I think one of them I think might have the mac and cheese. One of them for sure has my Kolache recipe. So that is a pastry. It's the way that my family made it was a walnut filled flaky pastry. And I used to make that with my grandma. It was very, very important to me. And so I kind of invented this vegan recipe of how to make it, because it was a sour cream based dough and tons of butter. So it seemed like it was going to be pretty hard. It took a while to figure it out. I know that one is, I think the one in Toledo Blade maybe had that one. So you can see some of those. But that's kind of like philosophically an interesting question too. Because really, you can Google anything, right? You can Google vegan corned beef, vegan Irish soda bread, like whatever, it's probably out there. So people think like, well, okay, why am I gonna like get a book? For me, well, I make books, I design books, I love books, right? There's just something about the physical aspect of it. Do I find recipes online? Of course. Did I research things online and coming up with some ideas? Yeah, of course, I do so on a daily basis. But I think there's just something really special about a physical piece, right? I mean, I have a giant collection of cookbooks that I just go back to constantly that are, either stained, they're dog-eared, they're torn, the binding is breaking. And I think, there's just something so tangible about having that book laid out in front of you, as opposed to having to have a screen on, right? A monitor. And even with printing out recipes, I just always throw them away. I could probably have a binder.
I know. I actually spilled water on my notes for this earlier. And I was like, oh my God, there's water all over my notes, all over my cookbook. But then I was like, okay, thank God it's not on my laptop, which is exactly what would happen and has happened when I'm trying to cook with a screen. And I love to annotate my books as well. Yeah. And so, Howie said that they joined a few minutes late. But yeah, book is online. There's the, in the chat, we've got some resources for how you can get it. And then Sue is wondering about cooking classes or a cooking blog, which, I mean, this has been so fun. So I would love to see
maybe we should team up, Erin. Let's start a YouTube channel and do it.
I like this idea. I think that'd be really fun.
That is something I think, being able to share this through the book, it does make me want to do more. Like I have so much fun with my Instagram. And so even though the book is like I did the Instagram to kind of help launch the book, to start connecting with some of these chefs and stuff, but now I just keep it going because it's super fun. I think there's also personality when you have a physical book that is not captured online. Belt is a indie publisher. We're a co-op. We're located here in Cleveland. We don't have a gigantic budget to put out, I'm gonna say it like it is. We don't have that kind of budget where we can put out a hardcover, glossy, tons of photography in it cookbook. That's not our cookbooks. That's not my cookbook. It's a choice to have it. If you had that kind of budget, that's great. But my favorite cookbooks tend to be, and also because it's a community cookbook, they tend to be ones. I mean, the Moosewood is so beautiful and such a classic. And this actual version does have a couple photo pages they put in, but it's the same kind of thing. This kind of thing is what was inspired me in my design for the book too.
Yeah, you've got great illustrations.
Yeah, and this humble thing of the community sharing, recipe card sharing, that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, I think eventually as I develop things, I'd like to have the website start maybe putting additional recipes that are not in the book online. I think that could be a great way to kind of build, especially because people keep saying now that the book is out there, you're oh my gosh, I wish I would have known. I could have given you this recipe of this thing from my great grandma or my uncle or whatever. So if there's not, I'd like to have a 2.0 version of the book, but if not, that's definitely something that maybe we could try to figure out a way to do online. If so, I'd have to somehow in the design of that website stick with the aesthetic. So
I like the aesthetic, very approachable and welcoming.
Cool.
Some cookbooks are intimidating. So, all right. We got a few minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, is the sauce ready? All right, everybody, we're gonna do a little Vitamix soundtracking.
Okay. I don't know, should I mute myself or we'll see.
Let's see how bad it is.
That's not bad.
It's not so bad.
Pretty powerful little sucker, so it doesn't take on.
Yeah.
Oh goodness, I wish you could smell this.
I can't believe how like much it looks like cheese sauce.
And I think again, that's the that's the turmeric, the nutritional yeast having that golden color. It's that little, the carrots. It's pretty exciting. I'm thinking about like, oh my gosh, do I have enough chips around to? Or should I actually, because I did not make any actual pasta, but just so you can kind of see the lovely texture of that, right? So it's going to thicken up if you put it in the fridge, like, for a dip or whatever. But that's really it. The recipe, you just make your favorite pasta and pour some of that over it. And, if you want to get fancy, you can sprinkle it with some toasted breadcrumbs or something like that. But yeah, pretty easy and pretty delicious. So.
That sounds really good. And I loved like the viscosity, because that's the thing of like, of mac and cheese that's the determinant for me. It's like, do you get the kind of stickiness? I don't want it to be kind of, for me personally, I'm not into the watery kind.
You're just eating sweet potato puree over pasta. I mean, that could be good. I don't see why I couldn't like it, but you want kind of, more of that richness and that cheesiness, which comes from these simple ingredients.
Yeah, it's great. Do we have any other questions from folks? I think we'd probably have time for one more, two, maybe. I mean, now I want mac and cheese. Like, do I have enough time? Oh, because I also wanted to ask you about your band, but I don't think we have enough time to do that either. But I'll ask you in an email. But yeah, you do play in a band.
I do, yeah. So that's actually part of my Slovak heritage too. I grew up with polka music and stuff. Started playing the accordion about 10 years ago. I do not play polka with my accordion, but I play in a rock band and then also a Pogues cover band. So as an Irish gal, I'm sure you know the Pogues. So yesterday was a very big day for us. We played from 10 in the morning till about midnight. So
oh my gosh.
I'm focused to do this today, but that's why I wanted to just do a really simple demo of things that I already had.
Yeah. It's great. I've learned so much, and I feel so much more equipped to cook vegan recipes after reading the book and hearing you talk about them and actually seeing some of these things myself. So
and there's lots of reasons why. I mean, it could just be out of curiosity. I mean, I think that wasn't really for me such an interesting part of the book, why? I mean, because when I told one of my friends about the project, well, she's like, why vegan? Why not just Rust Belt Kitchen? I'm like, well, a lot of reasons. Like, I have my reasons why I want to make my choices, but then I did ask the people that submitted if they would share why they want to cook this way. And some it's curiosity. Some of the chefs that also cook meat just like the challenge. It's an experiment thing, and I totally get that. I love that challenge. Some people will say health, environment, animals, religion. Like, there's a lot of reasons. And I think like vegans can get a negative stereotype, that they're doing it for like fitness or like, oh, I'm better than you because, morals or whatever. And like, it's totally not that way, especially when you're talking about vegans in the Rust Belt. Like there's a lot of reasons. So, it's just like judge. Let's not judge the choices. Let's not judge amongst other vegans. Like, are you vegan enough? Like, if you go to the bar and you end up ordering some pizza, like, are you now like a horrible vegan? Like, let's stop that, right? We're lucky enough to be able to choose what we want to eat. So let's just, use it to bring us together, not separate.
Yeah. I think that's a perfect way to close this up. And thank you so much, Meredith.
Until we launch our YouTube channel.
I know, will be great. We'll let everyone in the panel know when we do that. And so everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. Please consider buying these featured books, Meredith's and other
Yes.
authors from your local bookseller.
Local, yes, local booksellers
Love
or directly
them.
from Belt.
Yes.
If you're curious about the Rust Belt, we don't just do Rust Belt authors anymore, but we have a lot of fantastic books that do focus on our culture and the voices from authors of our region. So.
Yeah. And you can use the links on the vabook.org site. They've got all the links to all the books that you could possibly want from all of these different panels, including Meredith's, or there are all the links in the chat as well. And you can explore the rest of the 2022 Virginia Festival of the Book schedule, which runs through the 20th Sunday at vabook.org. So thank you so much, everyone, especially Meredith, and for Virginia Festival of the Book.
I love sharing this with y'all. Thank you.
This is great. Everyone, have a good weekend.
Aww.